All right, hey everyone, this is Sheriff Tim Carter. We're on the source today, and I've got a good friend of mine, Karl Roulston. Karl is the District 4 Board of Supervisors representative.
Until January.
Right, this is like your second term?
It is indeed, yes.
Yeah. And, I was telling somebody the other day, Karl, I've been the sheriff longer than any other person. And prior to that, I was the chief deputy here at the sheriff's office. So we're talking about a span of 1996 to present. And I got to tell you, man, and there have been some good supervisors, don't get me wrong, but the board that I've had over the last two cycles, to me, has probably been the most strategic thinking board that I've dealt with.
Wow.
And it's mainly because you and Josh Stevens and Tim Taylor. Not that other board members aren't decent board members, but yeah, that's something I've noticed.
It was one of the struggles. First of all, when you start as a Board of Supervisor, it takes you a couple of years to even get to understand not just the budget of Shenandoah County, but the whole budget process of when things have to happen and why and what your deadlines are. So it takes a while just to kind of figure that part out. But there was a recurring thing. Every budget cycle, it seemed like we were coming in and being surprised with CIP expenses.
Right, capital projects, right.
Yeah,
right.
And that to me was one thing that we clearly could fix is CIP is going to happen every year.
Right.
It's hard enough to balance the budget just for the operations side of things. But then when you get through that and it's like, oh, and now there's the CIP and you have to go and find another $2 million, $3 million, that is a big challenge. So what we had talked about for a number of years was being forward thinking and lay out how, we should be committing to a level of CIP, because even the staunchest critic about government expense knows that they have to take care of their buildings. They have to take care of their vehicles.
Right.
How often you replace them, those things are all open for discussion. But, we're an agricultural community, and these ag professionals know they got to keep their equipment running or they're done. So it's a similar thing. So that's what we had tried to do, was lay out so that we knew how we were going to do it. Now we're in a cycle of, we are debt financing our CIP, but it's a known thing that we're going in with a fixed amount.
Right.
And it's something that is planned and scheduled for. And I think that has started some improvement. And then when you start debt financing for your CIP, well, that frees up that $3 million that you had to find for CIP. And now, okay, you're still going to spend $500,000, $1 million on that financing part. But the rest of it can go towards your operation. So it kind of freed our hands a little bit for what we could accomplish with our regular budget cycle. But that, like I said, it took a couple of years just to understand it.
Right, and it's not probably not the most politically positive thing either when you're thinking about long term and trying to explain that to a public that's really they're focusing on right now.
Yeah,
what's happening right now.
Yeah, you understand it. But, we're not in national politics here. County supervisor position isn't solving national issues.
Right.
We're fixing roads. We're building schools or funding schools. And that's where the rubber hits the road, much like the towns. So, the biggest discussions that we have from constituents are really, I don't want taxes to go up. I don't want them to keep going up. It's never ending.
Right.
Absolutely understand that, but there are things that we do have to accomplish. We do have to educate the kids of Shenandoah County. We do have to have fire and rescue. We do have to have a sheriff's office. All of these things are important. They're not free.
Right.
And what some people, they don't like it. I understand they don't like it, but just like every year, the budget for your household goes up. If you were going to do a construction project, well, you can't build anything today for what you could do in 2015. Right. Well, that same inflation impacts the county as well. We're buying office supplies. We're buying construction equipment. Right. So that same thing happens. So that the idea of just hold the line, no increase, to get to that, people think, well, we can cut staff.
Right.
Well, we're pretty thin in the staff. I know there's a lot of people who don't believe that, but it's true. We are getting by with what we need to, and I don't believe there's any fat to be trimmed. So,
well, I tell people this, tell young staff this here, by the way, and just people that I run into. People are so enamored with voting in the presidential election, for example. But where the real decisions are made, the decisions that affect you every day,
yes, sir.
they are in these local positions.
Yeah, you're right.
And people just, I don't know if they just don't get it or they don't think about it. I'm not really sure, but I know I didn't think about it until I got into the position.
Mm-hmm.
And then I look each because I'm a student of politics. I'll look at elections and I'll see like turnout with a presidential election or a gubernatorial election. And then I look at the turnout when it's a school board race or a Board of Supervisors race. And I sit back and go, yeah, but those are the people right there that are making those day-to-day decisions. Yeah. But yet half the people are voting in those elections.
Yeah.
And but, yeah, I know. No, I'm with you. I mean, and then I think a lot of times you'll hear the national, whatever the national messaging is, and people then try to convert that to what's happening locally.
Yeah.
I've seen that in a lot of different aspects of over the course of time. That's not actually happening here. Yeah.
No, I agree.
Anyway,
It's an interesting struggle.
Yeah.
I have always had the position I will always answer the phone. People may not like the decisions I make, what I support, but I'm doing it for a reason that I believe in. And I think that any elected official should answer to that.
Right.
So, I might make a decision or raise taxes and you disagree. If you call me, I will tell you why I did it. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to win you over, but I'm telling you I should be able to answer you why I did what I did.
No, I'm with you 100%. I mean, I did the same thing here. I mean, even though it's an elected office, and of course, I align with a certain party or whatever. When you're here and you're making decisions, you're trying to make those decisions the best for the community. What does the community expect?
Yep, those are exactly the words I was thinking as you were saying it. It is for the community.
Yeah, and no, I've had positions where we've gone a direction and then we've changed directions because my thought process changed on that. But then I've also taken a position on certain issues or initiatives, and it's like, no, this is what we're dealing with. This is what resources we have, and this is how I'm going to deal with it. And some people are okay with it. Some people get pissed off, but I mean, it is what it is.
It is, and I just want to say that since I have been on the board, I have always found you to be very helpful to the community in budget times where times were tight and you would volunteer to say, you know what, I could buy 3 cars out of asset forfeiture, which helped us out tremendously. I've said this many times, but you have been very forward-thinking when it comes to the protection of our schools. You very early on had school resource officers in each of those facilities.
Right.
And you would read about these horrible things that have happened in other communities. And we were always ahead of the game because of you putting, the school resource officers in place. And I commend you for that and thank you for that. And I've said that to many people because I think that was a very impressive, forward-thinking thing to protect our community.
Well, we're trying, and, there's other initiatives out there. The sad thing is the other thing, and I noticed this just recently with a particular community where they had some really young kids with firearms. And I see now that they're actually initiating some type of a firearms detector kind of thing where they're putting it at these schools. And what you don't want to have happen, or at least what I don't want to have happen, is I don't want the really bad thing to happen. So you want to basically walk in, or at least what I try to do is walk in and go, okay, here's what I think your issues are. You have to set the priorities for funding. And then whatever you decide is whatever we live with.
Yeah.
But I don't also want it to be an incident where it's like, well, now that this has happened, let's go down this path a lot. But there are places out there, and that's what they do. They wait for the bad thing to happen or wait for the building or whatever to collapse. And all of a sudden, well, now we got to build a building.
Yeah, that's very reactive.
Yeah, you see that. And that's not, in my opinion, at least I don't think that's how you would run your own house. So I don't think it's how local government should run local government,
There is, and I mean, back to the budget and the financing for the CIP, that was sort of the thought process. It's like look, to cover the $5 million CIP that we would need every year, we could have either raised taxes 10 cents per 100 to collect that, or we could debt finance it and raise it a penny and a half for 5 years. We'll end up at the same place.
Right.
But at least what we're saying is expect a penny increase a year. Right. And this is our third year into that. So 2 more tweaks of that up a penny. And then it's built into the budget. So that just keeps recurring, and we've already got the pennies in there, so we don't have to tweak it anymore. But as much as people hate to have their taxes increase, at least you can plan for this. Know that for the next 3 years, we're going to raise your taxes a penny just to cover that debt finance. And that doesn't include any other things that come up, but at least that part. And then you can plan for it. What people, in addition to not liking their taxes to go up, they don't like surprises. So expect this. We're not going to surprise you with that. And then we'll be in a good place where we can continue on and focus on how do we streamline this? How do we become more efficient so that we can reduce taxes? Right. So that's at least the plan.
Yeah.
Business that I've been affiliated with, whenever it comes down to hiring somebody, if they are coming from Shenandoah County, I immediately know that I do not have a work ethic problem.
Right. No,
Shenandoah County, these kids know how to work hard.
Right.
That is not the problem. So then it's just, learning to do the job and fitting them in there. But that's one thing that this county does really well is teach their kids how to work hard.
Yeah.
So
no, I think you're right about that.
That's admirable.
Yeah.
But the environment has changed a lot. There's a lot more structure into the training of people because they and I don't know if it's because generationally, parents, we've been coordinating playtime. We've been coordinating activities, and so the kids just go along with the parents. And so when they go into the workforce, they're like, "Hey, who's setting up my meetings?"
Right.
I don't know, but it's an interesting change.
Yeah.
But it does ultimately come down to I'm a firm believer in organizational behavior and how you treat your people, and the rewards for treating people well are grand.
Right.
They will. You treat somebody well, you can get away with a lot. Like, hey, I'm not going to be able to give you this time off now, but they'll hang with you longer because you've been treating them well.
Right.
That's all organizational behavior, and I find that's something that's been changing through my career working in the engineering world, where it used to be a company was focused on people, and then it became focused on bottom line. And when you do that, that changes a lot. That cuts benefits. That you start outsourcing activities, and you lose that knowledge base.
Right.
And it's hard to get it back.
Well, when we talk about strategic thinking, and with regard to human resources, again, compared back to previous years, I think the county I personally think the county's doing a better job at that. To try to retain people here by having initiatives where you try to keep people there longer. And that's been helpful. Yeah. Well, from my perspective.
Well, it specifically with the training that you have to put your deputies through, right? So change is disruptive.
Right.
Losing people for whatever reason is very disruptive. Now you've got to go find somebody new, hire that person, then put them through the training. If we had a similar issue with our teachers in this county, right? The teachers were going elsewhere because of whatever reason. Sometimes it's pay, sometimes it's other things.
Right. And we tell people you can't. We know we can't compete with Northern Virginia. We get that,
and we don't need to. But what we do need to do is try and eliminate that turnover. If you're replacing a third of your staff every year, you are constantly chasing that training up
Right.
and keeping current. And
Right.
that's a formidable task. It's much better to try and work to retain that knowledge base so you don't have to go through that as much.
Right.
I mean, there'll always be some turnover, but minimizing that is a significant, important thing in managing a budget and a resource.
Right. Any things you can see on the horizon or that you'd want to talk about? I mean, I know, the sheriff, as the sheriff, it's not my job to build buildings.
Right.
I mean, of course, I hear what goes on in this and that, but I do know from talking with and observing things in different board meetings, at some point somebody's got to make a decision as far as facilities for education in Shenandoah County.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine that's going to be on someone's plate at some point in the future.
So that's a part of that long-term planning is to know when you can afford to do things as
Right.
well.
Right.
And I mean, I'll tell you that when we are done debt financing or raising the penny a year to get to our CIP covered funding, is about the same time that we have $2.5 million in debt service falling off. So it's the 2028 budget. $2.5 million we spend on debt service goes away. Well, now if you convert that into what kind of facility can I build? That's a $40 million facility that you can then build with that $2.5 million without having to raise any taxes.
Right.
So if we plug that into our long-term scheduling, we can do some preliminary work. I would like the school board to tell me where they want to build this facility. I would like to know. That's one of the things that I learned. Rich Walker gave me that lesson, and he's a very smart guy, and I do admire. But he's like, when I buy a car, I like to know what kind of car I'm going to buy and how I'm going to pay for it before I sign any papers. Well, I would like to know where we're going to build this facility and how much it's going to be. But then, like I said, we have $2.5 million in debt service. That can be applied towards a $40 million facility. Now, whether you can build a facility for $40 million in 2 years is a whole different discussion, but at least we have that to work towards. So if we keep our eye on the ball of the long-term planning for our debt service, and budget, that's when we should fold that in. And in the meantime, we still have to maintain those facilities that we have.
Yeah, everything you've got going on now. Exactly.
We're not closing them down when we build this new facility either. So it has to continue on.
Right.
So, and I do think it needs to be a little bit better communication between the school board and the Board of Supervisors. So I think in the near term, we're going to sit down and go over that long-term aspect of budget planning and tell them, look, here's where you get this money to roll in.
Right.
In the meantime, there's been a lot of discussion about underfunding of our CIP. And we have over the years. If you look back for 10, 15 years, we're guilty of that. We have not put enough money. I can remember budget years where we said nothing in CIP. That is not a sustainable concept, but we have done that. Well, if we are promising $3 million a year for our school facilities for CIP costs, but that's not enough, well, we need to know what the right number is, and then we can adjust to that.
Right.
So I think in the near term, we're going to have those discussions with the school board to try and determine what we should be funding every year, which is important because if I tell the school board you can count on X million a year, they can plan for that. They can allocate and decide what years they can do what things. So it's an important part for their planning. And we've been a little unfair to them by not telling them that. And they just get a random number thrown at them every year for their costs. So that's part of the planning that needs to happen. I think is going to happen in the next few months.
Right. That's good. Yeah, it's good to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a great county. Everybody can pick at this and that about they don't like here or that or this. But
I don't think people realize how good they have it sometimes.
Well, I think that's human nature.
Yeah.
We'd always like it to be better.
Yeah.
But
no, it's a great place to be. It's a great place. I think it's clean. It's good schools. It's safe. I just think it's you're close enough to the populated areas or whatever you might need to. If you need to go to something where you find in those areas. But, there's a lot to say about where we're at and what we work with every day.
Yeah.
Good?
No, I appreciate the time here.
No, well, listen, Karl, I appreciate everything you've done for Shenandoah County. I know it's a thankless job, man. And Board of Supervisors is it's not one of those where you get a lot of accolades and pats on the back. It's usually your
or pay for that matter.
Yeah. But I do appreciate everything that you do for Shenandoah County. I appreciate the relationship that we've had.
Likewise.
And I wish you the best. And thank you.
No, I could say the same things too. Thank you for what you do for Shenandoah County. I've always tried to be supportive. Yeah. Sometimes it's tough because we don't have any money, but you've always been more than willing to say, okay, I can push that off a year and we'll talk about it next year, which I greatly appreciate. And then, you've always been willing to work with us to try and help out. Yeah. So that has been a benefit through these budget cycles because any relief you can get from here to here is a helpful thing.
Right. Well, again, thanks so much. And thank you all for following us on The Source, and have a great day. Thank you.